The following video is a fictional simulation, part of an online social experiment for Discovery Channel's The Colony.
Hey, I'm Eric Skiff.
I'm Matt Joyce.
And we're from the hackerspace in New York, NYC Resistor, and we want to share with you a survival tip. So let's say you find yourself in a disaster situation, and you aren't sure about the water supply. Well, you can probably purify that water supply a lot of different ways. You could use iodine. There's lots of ways you could do this that are boring.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in a disaster situation, odds are you could probably use a drink. And I'm not just saying that. There's actually some valid benefits to getting crunked.
So instead of purifying your water supply, we're actually going to teach you how to brew your own beer. It's an incredible way to keep a safe, sustainable supply of hydration that also gives you calories and a little bit of fun.
It's also very portable.
So if you want to brew your own beer, there's a couple things that you're going to need, and these are all simple pieces that you can find pretty much anywhere.
You're going to need a way to generate fire. Down here we have a turkey fire with a propane tank. It's a very large container to actually boil your beer and your hops and all your ingredients in. If it comes down to it, even a trash can will work. The boiling is key. You need a sterile process. And that's where this guy comes in. After you've gotten all your stuff brewed up and ready to go, you're going to put it into what's called a wort container. Your wort is going to go into there. It's going to ferment in this guy. This guy doesn't have to be plastic. He can be another metal container, he could be plastic, he could be gasoline cans for all we care, as long as it's cleaned out and sterile. That's important. A lot of people don't know this about American history, but beer is tied very closely to colonial America. In fact, at certain points during the Revolution, the United States basically banned English imports of beer because they considered beer to be a matter of national pride.
Beer isn't just part of American history, it's actually the reason we landed on Plymouth Rock. The Pilgrims themselves were out of ship beer. You can read this in their own logs. They needed to set up a brewery. They were out of the stuff and they were going hungry and they were starting to get sick. If we want to brew our own beer, what are the pieces we need?
Well, in terms of ingredients, a grain or hops or something to that effect. It could be a dandelion, it could be a million different things. You're also going to need yeast and a sugar source.
If everything's gone to hell, where are we going to find yeast?
Yeast can be found in fruits. You can get very sugary fruits and extract it from there. You can find it from a number of different locations. Back in the 1600s, what they used to do is capture all these different things, throw them in a giant big barrel, and just let it ferment. And that was not exactly the safest practice or the most flavorful, but it worked for them in the 1600s. So we're going to work with something a little bit more up to date.
Smells like hamster food. So obviously we've got some modern luxuries at work here. We have prepackaged yeast. We have prepackaged hops. We have grain in a bag. You might not be able to find all these things like this, but there's a lot of facsimiles that would work. You can find yeast in nearly anything, including the air, but a great source of it is fruit. The grain, you could literally take the grain off of stalks of wheat.
So the days of Jack London, when mankind was cruising across the plains of the United States, searching for gold and adventure in the distant West, they found a million places to settle, but what they didn't have was breweries. So what they looked for was a process to produce really simple beer, and what they came up with was steam beer. Steam beer was a simple process: heat, package, let it ferment, call it a day. Didn't actually come out carbonated, didn't taste very good, but it was beer.
So now it's time to actually get your brew going. First, you're going to bring your pot of water up to a boil.
So you're going to take your wheat and your hops and you're going to grind them up into what's called a mash. Then you're going to pour your mash in and let it, percolate in there for a little bit to get the flavor soaked in. You remove the top layer of your mash when you're done. It's going to be at that point a kind of a smelly brown water. That's going to be called your wort. You're going to pour that into your fermenter, and then you're going to add your yeast and your sugars. If you don't have prepackaged yeast, that means lots of fruits.
All right, Matt, so now I got a big bucket of smelly proto beer. What am I going to do with it?
Well, you're going to find somewhere nice and damp. Preferably maybe a basement for a building, something that's going to stay a pretty solid temperature no matter what time of the year it is. You put it in there and you're going to let it ferment. Ferment's another word for letting it go bad. Pretty much all proto-cultures, all original civilizations in the world had their own form of beer. The ancient Egyptians had a papyrus-based beer. In Norway, the king, if he ever came to your house and you didn't have beer, you would be arrested because he would not drink water. The hallmark of civilization was providing key elements that allowed people to stay in the same location for a long time. Beer provided us the ability to move across oceans, across land, and stay in locations for a very long time and have a safe drinking source. Some have actually argued that the reason we stopped being nomadic was because we need to lay down beer to let it ferment.
Matt, what are you holding there?
This is a pint glass.
Looks like an empty pint glass.
It is.
Well, we should remedy that. All right, that setup's a little fancy. We've got CO2, we've got a keg, we've got hoses. You don't need all this. In truth, you can drink warm beer. It's not going to kill you. This is the resistor batch from 2010, thanks to our friend Devin. And this stuff is actually pretty good. Beer. Hallmark of civilization and survival. I'm Eric.
And I'm Matt.
We're from NYC Resistor. And remember, just because you've got to survive
Doesn't mean it has to suck.
Cheers.
Sanjay.
To participate in this social experiment, visit jointhecolony.com.